Welcome back to Real Weddings with Sara, the bridal suite series. Okay, so we've a different backdrop today because we are out in the brand new refurbished Grand Malahide. Guys, I have not been in this hotel in years, and I mean years. This is an absolute treasure trove and the renovation is exquisite. You're going to see this today with the bridal suite, but they've got so much more coming. New ballroom, bedroom refurb, but one thing that stays the same here is the absolutely out of this world spectacular view, and I'm hoping Gabby will stitch in a little bit of that as I talk about it. It is unreal. We're talking views stretching the whole of the Dublin landscape. It's unreal. Okay, so you need to check them out at grandmalahide.ie. Now let's get into it. So I put it to all of you as to what you wanted me to talk about on the podcast, and overwhelmingly you came back about money. Of course you did. You're money mad. So I'm going to go right into how much are guests putting in cards and all those cheeky questions that you want to know and don't want to be caught asking. So we'll cover all of that. But without further ado, come on, let's get stuck in. This series of Real Weddings with Sara is proudly sponsored by Aurelia Cosmetic Clinics, who specialise in bridal cosmetic essentials from skin prep to more advanced treatments. You can learn more about them over on aurelia.ie. Hello, welcome back to episode 2 of this 2-part series talking money, money, money. I can't sing, I know. Anyway, so on the last episode, we talked about, the real kind of the tough stuff, like really about, you guys saving, the cost of weddings in the industry at the moment, all of that, right? So look, that's all behind us. Today, we're going to be focusing on how much are people going to put in your card? I know. This is the stuff you want to know but are afraid to ask and don't want to be seen to be asking. And this is the sort of thing that I get messages about once you hit June, July, August. This is what my DMs are full of and what my friends are always messaging me about. What would you do? So I have run a poll for, I think, probably the last 5 years, asking people, what are you putting in a card? So I remember the first poll I ran was about 150 per couple, so for 2 people going. And for people who were going on their own, it was probably half, or if it was 150, they'd end up coming back saying, 100. So this year that went up. So it went up really, what I saw was that the main majority are saying €250. That was where the main majority were, with 200 also coming in strong. But there was also an increase in those who were saying that they were spending 300 upwards as well. So if you want to meet somewhere in the middle, you're probably saying the 250 mark per card, per couple, and then others were going 300 plus. So what's driving that? Well, people think that they have to keep putting more and more money in the envelopes, but also a lot of people would have a mindset going, I want to make sure that I'm paying for my meal. Now, you know, and I know as a couple who are sitting there doing the maths, that 200, 250 probably doesn't cover the cost of 2 people's package anymore in a lot of the venues that you're booking. But that's why I don't use that as a maths rhythm. The market is generally saying about €250. That's what's going in a card, and that's that. Now, you will have a cohort of people that will give more, you will have a cohort of people that give less, and then there's some other people who just, it's not their thing. They don't give cash, they give a gift, they give a sentimental gift, and it's actually so lovely to have that in your balance as well, because I can tell you the money will come and go, but sometimes that lovely piece that somebody bought you and it's still sitting there on display, it's just a really nice touch for your home, is also really, really nice. Now, one thing that I think is really important is that, like, your presence is a present. And I think that was always the premise when it came to a wedding. And I don't want to take away from the fact, because in fact, like, the messages that I get are so, like, I feel so sorry for a lot of people, particularly those who have multiple weddings in one year, and some are abroad and some are at home, where it is absolutely crushing them financially to attend a wedding. And I want to be really respectful of the fact that we're talking here loosely, like 250 is nothing. Like, that is a lot of money for someone, and it's actually for some having to turn down a wedding because they don't want to be seen to come and not contribute to your wedding as well. So I think it's really important that we respect that as well. And this leads me on to one of the pieces of one of the messages that I got. So a girl told me that she got married over Christmas, and there was a couple of guests who didn't give anything, not even a card to acknowledge. Now, I would find it very unlikely that someone would not give you a card, or at least if they didn't bring the card on the day, that they still have it and just haven't remembered to give it to you, right? I genuinely think that. But I think the assumption that there should always be money in it, we need to kind of escape from that, because the reality that a lot of people are facing right now is they cannot afford to pay 3, 4, 5, 600 euros to stay overnight in a hotel, to come to your wedding, and then also provide a gift or get flights to somewhere. Like, it is a lot. So anything that you do get from a cash perspective is an absolute bonus to get, right? It's lovely to have. So what this girl had said is that she had a number of guests that didn't give a card, and she's at two minds whether to approach them. So I just said back to her, I said, well, right, there's two things here. Number one is the sensitivity that might have been really, they just can't, they're not in a position to do it. But still, a card to acknowledge wishing you well on your day, that doesn't cost a lot, right? So then in my head, I was thinking, maybe your cards went missing, and maybe they did give them in and they've gone, they've just didn't land where they were meant to land. And then that got her thinking. So at this moment in time, she's gone to check that, and that's the only reason she's asking and looking about, because this was the other piece. So I got a message that was saying, and you probably saw it up in my stories, about nobody talks about wedding cards going missing enough. So I could write a book on the stories I've heard of this, between best men taking it, between people not giving it, and between it getting stolen at venues, and no hate to venues, but it can happen. So here's what I think. So number one is that majority of people going to your wedding are going to give you a gift. A majority of people going to your wedding are definitely going to give you a card. If you haven't got a card from someone who you know would normally give you a card, or at least tell you, I'm going to give you a card, you can always just check in and say, by the way, I'm not looking, but did you by chance give your card to somebody in our wedding party or to the venue? Just in case, I'm just checking, right? And that's still awkward, don't get me wrong, but what if they did give it to you and you didn't even know, right? So just bear that one in mind. Cards can go missing, 100%. I remember even for my own wedding, when we were cleaning up, I found cards on the floor. I was like, Jesus Christ. Because some people get carried away in the day. They might leave it on the table, go, oh, I must give that to someone, and then forget, and then it's lifted off the table when the tables get moved, and then all of a sudden it's on the floor. So just bear that one in mind. Now, most venues, as soon as they see a card, they'll scoop it up and give it to you. So what I would always say is, whoever is taking responsibility for taking in your cards, they should have a clockwork system where when they get to a certain point, they get the hell up to that safe and they put it in a safe. Where couples come into trouble when it comes to cards is because they didn't put them in the safe. Now, I'm not saying it's your fault, it's the thief's fault, but don't leave your cards out in a hotel room. Always put it in a safe. Most hotel rooms have a safe. If they don't, you need to talk to the venue about, do they have a safe? And they will also have some form of safe that you could put the cards into until you're ready. So really put them away somewhere that's, not going to be targeted. Of course, anyone on the street would know that on the day of a wedding, there's going to be a lot of cash in a bridal suite. So just make sure it's somewhere very, very secure, and you're giving it to someone who you know is by the book, will make sure every single thing goes in. Because human nature is, unfortunately, out there, sometimes you can just have a little bit of badness, and that's just the way it is. Then I also heard a story whereby the bride was like, we didn't get cards off X, Y, and Z. And husband said nothing, but turns out he had actually dipped into the cards that night to pay for a couple of rounds of drinks. So again, transparency as a couple and talking about these things are really important. So just bear that one in mind. Now, here's a good tip. And if you've listened to the previous series of the podcast, you'll know that we had Laura on from With Everly. So basically they have a function where you can have your wedding website, you can actually send out digitally, you can send out your invitations, but one of the key components that they have on the website is your digital wedding postbox, which means that you can put your digital card into the postbox with money in it, so you don't actually have to physically hand over cash on the day of a wedding. So it's all there, it's all stored in a cash environment. And that came from Laura actually going, hold on, I'm a bridesmaid here, what is going on with all this cash and what would happen? So having this digital thing, some people feel like, oh God, that feels grubby. Guys, you're getting money anyway. like at least keep it secure. I know one of the last weddings I went to, I just revoluted them and I said, I want to make sure this goes in to your account right now. And I'd always send, where I can, I'd always send the money before the wedding, because I always feel like there's all these things that crop up that people need money for, so I like to send it before. But again, I just revoluted, because I was just like, at least I know it's gone over as a guest. So that's also a trend, and I know a lot of you are moving that way as well, and the couple really appreciate it, because they're not having to go into banks, they're not having to do all that madness as well, because there's a bit of admin and there's a bit of a worry knowing that you've got all this cash in your car when you're leaving and all of those different things. So just to bear that one in mind. But again, where it comes to the card, if I had a guest that came and didn't give me a card or cash, I'd probably let it go personally. To be honest, I don't even think I'd notice, if the truth be told. I was just on my own wedding day, I was just so happy that Jesus, I pulled it off. But anyway, because it was a DIY wedding. But I do know other people have gone to guests, particularly guests who they know are just notorious. They have plenty of money and are just chancing their arm and turning up and not doing something. So look, to each their own. Like, I'm not going to tell you what you should or shouldn't do. You decide how you want to handle somebody coming to your wedding and not giving you cards. But you have to remember, like, you know, somebody providing you cash as a gift, it's not a ticketed event here. It's not like you're going to a concert where you're paying to attend a concert. Like, it's a bonus for every single cent you get off someone. And in fact, some people are just so generous. So just bear that one in mind. Get the gratitude boots on. Their presence is a present. I know you're going to hate me for saying that, but it is true. But other people were in touch about the rising cost for guests going to wedding, and this obviously plays on the piece of on the cards, because I know people are putting more and more every year into the card. So I was actually only having a conversation today with Gabby, who's behind the camera, and we were talking here about, you know, going to weddings, and, you know, I nearly fell out of my standing when I heard what some were paying for staying overnight in some hotels around the country, and some were, I think, 650, and then somebody else said €1,000 for one night stay in one place. So I'm kind of going like, mother of God, guys, please bear in mind that your guests will find that really tough. So let's just say you're going to a wedding, and per couple, €1,000 for accommodation, 250, 300 in a card. Guys, that's a trip to Lanzarote, right? Or that's you not getting in debt. And then there's the hair, the makeup, the everything that goes with it, the petrol, the whatever, right? It's a lot of money, right? So just really bear that in mind. I know when we're planning our wedding, we're doing everything and we're paying so much money out, but just really think on that periphery of what can guests afford. And also, I always think it's really important when you're sending out your invitations that, yes, there is the hotel accommodation, but do your homework and look around and make sure that you've got guest house options, taxi options, and give people information, B&Bs, whatever it might be, for those who want to just keep it lean. And I think that's really, really important. I know I'm hearing years ago people used to hire buses to bring people in and out of their weddings, and that's stopped, but I'm actually hearing more and more of that coming back in, of people hiring buses and all this sort of thing to get people back from A to B. Anyway, neither here nor there, but just to bear that one in mind. Now, the other question I got asked was, if the wedding is abroad, do you still give a cash gift? Guys, don't ask me, right? Personally, don't ask me. Ooh, watch my mic. Personally, don't ask me. However, I did ask this in a poll, and the majority came back saying, yes, we're still giving a gift, and yes, we're still giving pretty much the same as if it was a wedding at home. Yeah, that kind of one, kind of like, I do feel like it's an awful lot going abroad. Now, look, if you're paying €1,000 for accommodation here in Ireland and only €100 to stay in a lovely villa in Spain, okay, right? But sometimes with the abroad weddings, what you save as a couple can push it down the road into your guests. But if guests are coming on a holiday, that takes a whole different perspective on it. But just bear in mind, and it's rare that I'm seeing any hen or stag not going abroad at the moment. You know, they're all going abroad. So just remember those things that everybody is paying. It is such, I have to sometimes remind, even myself, it is such a privilege to have somebody dig into their pocket the way they do for your wedding, to celebrate your send-off into married life. Like, when you think about it, it's extraordinary. You could have 100 people or 200 people come to your wedding, and they've all spent maybe anything from €600 to €2,000 to be there for you. That's phenomenal. When you think about it, it's huge. So just to bear that one in mind, that guests are feeling it too. So with all of that in mind, all my wisdom and experience coming out the other side, that wraps up this episode. So remember, money can be your friend, money can be your foe, but you'd need money to get married. And look, guys, the very best of luck as you navigate all of these hurdles. And I just hope that you have a lovely smooth ride and financially everything's rosy and that you win the Euro Millions. Wouldn't that be lovely as well? Good stuff. Thank you.